Check 1 2, check 1 2. Can you give me a check?
This is RJ Manuelian, live from American Crime Podcast, Los Angeles Studios.
Welcome to the drive.
Why did people talk like this back in the day?
I don't know. It was the radio voice.
The radio, yeah. So,
Matthew Perry. What happened to him?
who killed Matthew Perry?
Who killed Matthew Perry?
Was Matthew Perry murdered?
Was he?
Well, if you do the math and if you assume that he had an overdose, he was prescribed, right?
Matthew
was prescribed ketamine. Tell us what ketamine is.
I hear of it as a cat tranquilizer, but it's a party drug.
According to Musk, it's a happiness drug. Matthew Perry described it as being hit in the head really hard with a happy shovel.
Whoa.
But he said the crash is worse. That's why it's very addicting. Apparently you get really happy and really sad.
So Matthew...
It's used for depression.
He was using it to
anti-anxiety depression.
Clinically address his depression.
And his drinking problem.
In a rehab center.
Well, that's the thing. So if it was prescribed by his doctor, right, the only way would be overdose if he took too much. So they have to evaluate whether he self-induced or whether the medication that was given to him was a high dosage.
It seems like from what I read...
Which would mean to me that it would be an illegal pill.
I think it was known that he was doing ketamine, but as part of a regulated program, like not the rehab center, but it was a clinical depression treatment using ketamine under supervised guidelines. Many doctors say if you can use it under supervision, it can be good and beneficial for depression and anxiety, which he was apparently using it for. Yeah. But then like a week to 10 days later is when he died.
Right.
So they're saying he hadn't actually received the treatment in a while, so he might have been self-medicating with the ketamine, maybe.
He might be, but if that's the case, why are two law enforcement agents investigating, asking questions, and going to an actress by the name of Brooke Mueller, who was Charlie Sheen's ex-wife, and asking him, by the way, did you give him ketamine? And if you Google research that, I believe that she was also using ketamine, and that's why they went to talk to her. So basically what it comes down is this. This is how the law works. If I give you, Tony, my medication to you, and you die, I'm criminally responsible. I could be charged with homicide. Now, I don't know if they're going to charge me with murder or voluntary manslaughter and involuntary manslaughter. It's a homicide. When you cause the death of somebody, it's a homicide. Why do I think they're investigating the death of Matthew Perry? Because I think it may be a homicide. A homicide based on the fact that he has too much ketamine in his system, and they're wondering how it got in. According to Matthew Perry's book, according to his accounts, he was not abusing his ketamine. How do I know that the police know for sure he wasn't abusing it? I don't know. We got to take a look at the toxicology results, which we don't know yet.
But we do know that he had some kind of ketamine in the lining of his stomach in the autopsy. So there was ketamine in his body when he died.
Yeah.
Allegedly drowned in the bathtub in his house in Pacific Palisades.
Yeah. So what happens is it decelerates the heart and it caused a cardiac arrest, and it also caused his breathing to slow down. In effect, what one doctor said it was the equivalent of him taking anesthesia while he was in the jacuzzi.
Right. They said it was as much ketamine as would have caused an equivalent anesthesia for surgery.
Right.
You'd be fully knocked out.
Right. And if you've ever done surgery, and I have, anesthesia is super strong. You could count to 3 and you're gone. You're just knocked out. You don't remember what happens after counting 3.
Right. So is the idea that you're in a bathtub and you knock out and you drown?
That's an accelerant, yeah. So
you just drown.
So what happened was they said he drowned, yeah, from acute intoxication of ketamine.
So you're underwater and you just don't wake up.
Well, I don't know the timeline, whether he died before he went under or whether he went under and then died. I don't know. But that wouldn't make a difference anyway, because the cause and effect is what's important. How did he die? He died from ketamine-induced overdose. The second question is, how was that induction made? Was it self-induced? Did he do it himself where he overdosed? Or was that a drug given to him by somebody else which caused the overdose? In other words, did he get a spiked pill?
Not to get too bleak about
or an illegal pill.
Not to get too dark, but did he die of drowning actually? Or what was in the report is that he died of drowning, meaning you cannot breathe because you're underwater. Now that could happen if you're unconscious due to ketamine. Or was it really an OD, where his heart stopped because of ketamine use? Because I would think the autopsy would show that. Right?
Absolutely.
And I think it was drowning. is what they say.
According to the autopsy, he died from acute effects of ketamine. Now, what you're asking is, on the timeline, and this is interesting to me too, did he die before he went under?
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to that question.
Right. Okay.
I know the pathologist has ruled that he died from acute effects, which means strong effects, very strong effects, or an overdose, what is known as an overdose.
Okay. So we know that he had ketamine in his system when he died. We think that he hadn't had sort of regulated official treatment center ketamine for at least a week to 10 days prior. So that means investigators are suspicious that he got ketamine himself. If he got it himself, whoever gave it to him, under what you just laid out from the legal principle, is potentially guilty of homicide.
So this is the distinction. Yes, I think you're right, but let me go back a little bit. According to the investigators, they found trace amounts of ketamine, which is, as you said, used for depression. The trace amounts were in his stomach, but the coroner found in his blood was the same quantity as would be used in general anesthesia.
Wow, a lot.
So again, in his stomach, trace amounts.
Traces, right.
But in his blood,
a ton. Okay. So that's fresh use right there.
So now, and do the math. Now watch this. You're not a lawyer. If I tell you that the Los Angeles Police Department, with the assistance of the Drug Enforcement Agency and U.S. Postal Service, put a footnote on that one, Tony, U.S. Postal Service, the Robbery Homicide Division is investigating that. What does that mean to you?
Somebody mailed him ketamine, and
Right.
they're tracking it through the USPS
Right.
on top of it, and they kind of might know who it is.
Right.
How hard is it to know where a package originated?
That's how I would do it if I was good job, Sherlock. So I would do the same thing. I would say Robbery Homicide Division. Okay, they think it's a murder. Postal Service, they think somebody probably sent him something in the mail, which I'm sure you know Bob Denver, the actor, ordered marijuana years ago. I was in Hawaii, Gilligan's Island.
I vaguely remember.
Actors do this stuff all the time. My clients, and I'm not going to mention clients, I've dealt with clients that mail Federal Express cocaine.
Right.
Cocaine. Their job is to Federal Express cocaine. Funny story.
Federal Express.
Yeah. I have a client. He was doing it for 19 years. He came to my office for advice. You know what I told him to do? Retire. I said, you haven't got caught one time. You're lucky. Getting back to this happens all the time. They mail drugs to actors all the time.
So FedEx or UPS could work?
Yes.
I'm looking for sponsors here.
It could be, it could be anything. So I think you're right. Getting back to it, I think something was mailed to him, my guess.
Can I ask you, how safe is it if you're stupid enough to start mailing narcotics to people? What's the likelihood of getting caught? I mean, that's a lot of packages. Are they sniffing? Are they dog sniffing?
I don't know what the statistics are, but I will tell you, based on my successful group of clients that have done this, it's excellent packaging. It all comes down to the packaging.
Got it. They prevent getting.
I'm not going to get into
captured somehow.
I'm not going to get into the details.
Don't get into the details.
But I will let you know
They
that
have their ways.
Their description of how it's packaged, it's so unique.
Interesting.
And the methods change all the time and how it's brought over, and it's usually not in its form. It's.
Got it. They change form.
Yes,
everything to evade detection.
It's a science. It really is. And they have scientists that they hire, engineers that they hire.
But here we're talking about an actor in Hollywood who just wanted ketamine, and probably one of his buddies who's not like a world-class narcotic smuggler just decided to throw some in a package and send it over.
Or it could be an illegal website. Do you remember the Silk Road? You could, back in the day.
Yeah.
It was on the dark web. You could go on the dark web. I'm not going to mention to our audience, there is a dark web, and you could literally go order coke and heroin and drugs. Happens every day when people go. So go back to the Silk Road and how
that guy was prosecuted too recently.
But there's other dark websites where you could unfortunately order child trafficking, drug trafficking. Just, they call it the dark web for a reason. So it's possible that Matthew Perry may have gotten the drugs from the dark web, or maybe from a friend that sent it to him.
Right. So the investigators currently right now are trying to figure out who sent him the ketamine. If it's his friend, if it's somebody he was hanging out with, who you just mentioned, who used to be married to Charlie Sheen. I don't even know if we should say her name.
They interviewed her, so that's a public record. I'm only putting it public out there. I'm not disseminating any information that we're making up. I'm only telling you they interviewed her. So if you ask me, RJ, why are they interviewing Brooke Mueller?
Yeah.
They usually interview the people that are connected to the crime the closest. So they're going to her because they're asking her, do you know who this package is maybe? Do you know this person is maybe?
Right. She's not necessarily a suspect.
No, I'm not saying that she's a suspect, but she has information they believe that could connect the dots.
Got it.
And because she's a ketamine user or was, perhaps she knows the person that was mailing it. Perhaps she knows where he was getting it. They were good friends and they met in rehab. So maybe they're going to the source to say, hey, listen, did Matthew ever open up and say where he was getting his drugs from, if he had a side dealer and so forth? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So she's a person of interest in the case.
Yes.
Are there other people of interest?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. She's literally the only one there.
She went to rehab with him recently. She was in rehab recently, and she was also using ketamine. Again, I'm not saying that she, in any way, that she furnished the ketamine, but the only reason they go talk to you as a person of interest is because you have information they believe that could fill in the dots. Why they believe Brooke Mueller could fill in the dots, I have no idea. But they know that she knows something that's going to be useful to them.
But you believe that in the current state of the investigation, they're confident it was a homicide of some kind? Or at least worth investigating.
They're trying to rule it out right now. The homicide, the robbery homicide unit, which doesn't mean there was a robbery, by the way. They're usually the same department. Okay, robbery, homicide. So the homicide unit is involved because there's acute levels. They're trying to rule it out. I'm not saying that Matthew Perry was murdered for sure, or there was a homicide.
Right.
But the acute levels were so high. And since Matthew Perry was saying, he was coming off of the depression, he didn't want to use drugs anymore. He went all over the media saying that he's weaning himself off the drugs. How did this happen? Right? There's a disconnect. So, and there's an acute level of ketamine in the system. There's a disconnect because of that.
Yeah.
So they're just trying to rule that out. But they are investigating as a homicide, in my opinion, because a homicide is involved, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, why would they not be involved?
It's not a willful homicide. It's not necessarily a murder in the first degree or even second. There's no mens rea here necessarily. Nobody intended to kill him that we know of.
But second degree doesn't require intent.
Agreed. No, it's going to be just like you said. It's a homicide.
It's a homicide. It could be second degree murder is defined as reckless disregard for the life of another. Okay, so
the problem is he might have been the one that was reckless, and they might have very carefully given him the ketamine. But I get it; that's reckless,
and that's what's being investigated
by nature.
Right now.
Yeah,
but the fact,
user error.
I'm going to disagree. I'm going to disagree respectfully. I'm going to backtrack and say no. I disagree with that because why would they be investigating the U.S. Postal Service? That's a big flag for me.
Okay,
like if they thought he overdosed himself, why are they going to the postal office? What's that about?
But I'm saying if he got it from a friend through the post.
Oh, if he got it from
and then he just effed up and took twice the amount and overdosed
so that
himself.
friend isn't allowed to prescribe it.
No prescription. Just take this. Hey, man, use it carefully. And this guy went 3 times the user error.
It's against the law to distribute narcotics.
Yeah, so that's where the friend gets
You can't be a street pharmacist, Tony.
Right.
I can't call you up and be like, hey, listen, I'm going to give you a little gummy bear here. I'm going to give you a bunch of them, but take 3 right now.
That's another career.
And you take 4 and you die of an overdose. And I'm like, well, it's not my problem. He distributed it incorrectly. I'm just the guy that furnished it.
Yeah.
Giving drugs, distributing drugs is illegal. Let me tell the audience that. So don't think it's okay to give somebody X. And if the person dies, well, I didn't tell him to take the X.
Right.
Or I just gave it to him. You gave it to him. You could be responsible.
I bet there's people who believe they're at a club, they're having fun, they got a few pills, and they tell their buddy, hey, you know what? Why don't you have one of these? Go have fun over there. And I bet there's some people that think, it's not like I sold it. I didn't charge him. It's just my buddy. Right. I gave him one. I didn't even get anything in return. That's not distribution or trafficking. Are they wrong?
Yeah, they're wrong on the distribution, and it happens all the time. You know where this happens? Distribution?
Vegas?
Coachella.
Really?
Yeah, because everybody passes drugs like it's Woodstock 1969.
Right. So everybody's distributing.
Yes, everybody. Hey, you want to hit, bro? Go ahead, take it. I'm having a good time, bro. You want to hit? Yeah. Drugs are being flown.
You give me a pill and I'm like, yeah, not into it. Give it to my buddy. I just distribute it.
That's it. Wow. That you just distributed. And how do I know? Because I go to Indio Courthouse, which is outside Coachella, okay? And I represent people and they're shocked. They're like, what? All I did was give them I didn't ask for any money. You don't have to ask for money. I didn't
sell shit, man.
I didn't sell shit. You don't have to sell. As long as you gave it, it's illegal. Oh, I didn't know that. Now you know. Why is it illegal? Because they don't want people going around giving drugs to other people. That's why. Yeah. Why? Because they could overdose.
Right. like in this case, a clear
because you
overdose.
don't know the potency of it. There's no, like when you pick a pill up like Tylenol, it's been FDA registered, right? The Federal Drug Administration says it is what it is. It says the milligrams on it. It's been tested. The drugs that you're getting at Coachella, that's not tested. There's no milligrams. You have no idea what you're getting. There's not FDA approved. You have no idea even if the drug itself is what it is.
Absolutely.
You might be sucking down some other drug that you didn't know about.
It's a risk out there for sure.
That's why distribution is illegal. And if somebody gave Matthew Perry ketamine that was stronger than what it was supposed to be, that person could absolutely be found guilty of a homicide.
Wow. I mean, it makes sense, man. And there's a lot of people out there that are at risk of that just because they're being nice to their friends and giving them things. And
yeah, that's not going to go too well with the jury. Hey,
But-
listen, I was being a good guy. I just mailed him some ketamine because my bro was down on his luck, you know.
Yeah.
I thought the ketamine would cheer him up. I didn't know he was going to OD.
Yep.
And the jury's going to say, you know, that's a great story. Guilty.
I could see it. All right. So we're waiting for what? To see if actual charges come down the line or if this is maybe ruled a suicide and the homicide taken off the table?
So either one or two things. Either they're going to do a press conference, and they're going to do one. You know why? Because they want to get in the press. The sheriff wants to look good. This is a high-profile case. Matthew Perry's a high celebrity. It's newsworthy. All the above, check boxes. So they're going to do a press conference, and then they'll announce whether or not they're closing the homicide case and ruling it self-induced or whether they're going to charge.